Hello and welcome back to the next stage in our tutorial. This is kind of where we left things. This is our character here. She's looking okay. That's a render. So, yep, let me escape out of that. So there she is in the viewport. So, in this tutorial we're going to look at rigging this character. So before I do that, I just want to have a look at what we've got. So we've got several different components. So we've got our hood, we've got our character's head and hands, we've got our buttons, etc. So we need to we don't have to join these things together, but it'll be probably make things easier if we do that. So let's have a little kind of ponder about that. So at the moment when we look at these things, so we have several materials here. As we start joining things together, we're going to end up with one item with many materials. There's no problem with that. We just need to kind of keep an eye on how many UV maps we have and what they're called. So let's rename this body. So if we look at that, this is actually two UV maps. So this is, we'll call this skin, and this one here we'll call hood. And we won't worry with the eyes. We're not going to join the eyes with the rest. The buttons are not UV unwrapped, so we'll just join them straight away to the body. So let's select the three of them, and that one. So not the hood, not yet anyway. And we're going to go Control J and join them. So that was pretty painless. We've only got a subsurface modifier on the body at the moment. So we'll take our hood. Now this has a solidify modifier on it, so I'm going to apply the solidify modifier. Otherwise it will not be applied before it's added in. So we'll apply that. And then we will join Control J, and you can see, so the object added inherits the modifiers of the parent object, so it's had its modifier removed. So, and finally we'll take our hands, again it's only subsurf, so Control J, and this is our model. So we're going to save as, and we'll call this 2. Now let's render that and see what we've got. So immediately we've got some issues with texturing. So let's go in and see if we can fix them. We can also see we've got a tiny vert count, and obviously the quality has fallen off as well accordingly. But so let's have a look and see if we can fix or work out what's happened to our textures. So here we are. Let's change this to be our node editor and see what we've got. So first of all, you can see we have a number of UV maps. So let's go to the face. So, and let's set to rendered mode. So the face and the hands seem to have come out just fine. Now when I select the hood, for example, it seems to be the same, but we have no vector input for the image. So I'm going to add an input, and it's going to be UV map. So we get to stipulate which UV map it should use, and the UV map we should use for the hood is hood. And again, I can go to my cloth, and again this has the body UV map on it, and what I need to do is same thing again. So I need to add a UV map, link the UVs into the vector in, and say body. And now we are back to where we started. So it's important that you label these, the UV maps, not just have them all called UV map, or you work it out, there's not that many of them, but it can cause problems if you don't. So not perfect, our good lady here, but she's all one mesh. We have fixed any unwrapping problems we might have had, and now she is ready to be rigged. Now, so let's just get straight into this. So there's a couple of things to sort of explore. I'm going to move this to layer 2 to get out of the way, and this as well. So there's a few things to kind of ponder with this. Blender has built into it a really complex and interesting rig system called Rigify. And Rigify, if I turn it on, it will change my add menu to, instead of just having single boat here, it'll have different options for different types of arms or full body meshes. So we could use that, but Rigify is really complicated. It gives a very simple mesh. You skin that, you sort of apply that to your mesh, the bones of the mesh, and then it generates a secondary mesh, which is basically a control mesh to allow you to manipulate all sorts of things in your character. But the crux of it is that it's quite complex, and if you don't understand the very basics of rigging, Rigify can appear magical. So you'll be moving a circle and the hips will move and you won't know why. So what we're going to do with this model, and it's all about education, and you are in college, I hope. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to build it from scratch. So let's go do that. So we're going to add a bone, and I'm going to turn on X-ray on this bone, and here it is. So let's cursor to selected, and then selection to cursor, and look at this from the front. So I'm going to go into edit mode, bring this down here, and then we'll just sort of talk our way through this. So I'm going to bring this up to the base of the neck. We're going to try and keep it as simple as possible. So this will be our neck, and then we'll have our head and probably an IK bone for the head. Now we will label these things as best we can. So the armature is going to be called, I don't know what our character is called, we'll call it Ranger Rig. And we'll call this head IK, and we'll call this head and neck, and we'll call this spine 2 and spine 1. Now we are going to extrude on Y this way. We'll call this bend. Now I'm going to turn on X mirror, or X-axis mirror. So this is my X-axis, so I can get a mirror, but I need to go, I think it's Control E, no, Shift E, there we go. And that's going to get me my hips. Now, I'm actually going to, I'll delete them in a minute, but so I'm going to extrude to the knee and down to the foot. So, and we'll try and get these in the right place right from the beginning. So I'm going to delete them. Like I said, this is going to be quite a simple rig. So I'm going to have a foot bone to there, be able to move my toes, my heel, excuse me, and then I want an IK bone. So let's label these. So this is foot IK dot L. We go Control C. This bone is .or. This is going to be shin C, and this is shin.or. This is foot.l, and this is foot.or. Toes.l, and this one is toes.or. No, I didn't do that right. Control V.or, and then this will be heel.l, and heel.or. A little bit laborious. You have heard me say that before. This is going to be leg.l, and then leg.or. Now, so that's the first part done, roughly. We have to do our arms, and then if we want to add in, maybe I'm going to add in bones. I'm going to add in a bone on this sleeve, so I can get a bit of sort of movement on the sleeve, independent of the arm. But no, there's nothing too, like, she doesn't have wings or any other strange parts. Okay, so I'm going to again Shift D, so it can be my shoulders, and extrude down to the elbow, and then to the wrist. We'll look from the side, and move that to there. And about there. So again, we'll try and label them as best we can. So that'll be sh.l, and .or. This is arm.l. I'm just copying and pasting the names across, and then swapping out the extension. So this is forearm.l. Also, if I spell the name incorrectly, which I have been known to do, this is helpful because it will duplicate the spelling mistake. Now I'm going to take this bone here, and I'm going to Shift D or 180, and place this bone here, and I'm going to call this master. And now we have to. So we have a few things we haven't sort of discussed about this character. We didn't really do sort of go through a design phase with the character, which is a shame really, but I'm trying to do this as quickly as possible. So I'm going to take this eyeball and go Shift S, cursor to selected, go back in here, take this bone here, Shift S, selection to cursor. So now I know that the base of that eyeball, or that eye bone, is in the right position. The front of it's not important, it's just the base, because that's the pivot point. I'm going to take that, I'm going to call this I.or. I'm going to duplicate this. This will be I.l. And we'll do the same thing. So what I meant there about the design process is we haven't kind of discussed things like how should this character move its mouth, for example. So we haven't modeled any teeth, so she can't open her mouth, or she could. We'd have to add in teeth now, which we could do, but we're not going to do that. So we're going to leave her as is. But there are a few things like that we should have decided early on and discussed, but we haven't, so that's okay. Now, this is going to be called look. So we're going to put a constraint on these two eye bones, this moves, these bones are both basically going to track this and are going to point at it. Now, so that means, so let's have a look at some parenting here. So they're all parented to the base of the head bone, which is how we want them. So when the head rotates back, we want these to inherit the rotation of the head, so that when the head goes back, the eyeballs don't stay in place. So let's just very quickly go into pose mode, and if I rotate here, so that's what would happen. So the head would move backwards, and the eyes wouldn't follow. So if we go back into edit mode, we make, instead of the parent being the neck that we see here, we make it the head. We do the same with that bone. So head, and same with this bone here. So head. Now if we go back into pose mode, and we rotate this, the eyes move with the head, which is obviously what we want. Okay. So, the last thing we've left to do is the slightly laborious task of fingers. So let's go do it now while we can. Okay, so I'm going to make a hand bone. So I'm going to extrude this up here, and I'm going to call this hand dot L. And hand dot or. Now, so I'm just going to bring it back a tiny bit. So I'm going to take this bone here and look for the front. Oops. And we're just going to have a tiny little aside here about bone roll. So bone roll is to be avoided. Now, what is bone roll? Well, bone roll is the orientation of the bone. So we could very easily have a bone here, if you can imagine. If this bone was at 0 degrees, if we rotated this 90 degrees, this bone, it would look exactly like it looks now. It would just have rotated 90 degrees. But its local axis would be completely different. So we got a local here, so I could have Z being up and then Y being up, or instead of X being this way, it would be Y as being that way. So to avoid that, we turn off our bone roll, or we'll get unpleasant and unexpected surprises when we go to animate this. We'll find that our bones kind of deform or rotate in slightly undesirable ways. Okay, so I'm going to take this bone here and I'm going to duplicate it into the base of my finger. So there, and there, and there. Now you can see that these are not correctly positioned, because this hand is not comfortably sitting on an axis in 3D space. But that is okay. We can fix it. So there are my 3 bones. Now there's a number of ways to set these bones up so that they behave like I could have a master bone when I scale this. These 3 bones would, so the finger would bend inwards as I scaled a 4th bone. So I can set up all sorts of really interesting and powerful modifiers that I haven't set up here and don't intend to set up here, simply because, like I said, this is a sort of a training rig, shall we call it. So just let me Shift D, Shift D, and we'll just try and position these. Okay, and then we have to name these in a moment, which will upset us and take a while. And Shift D. And then the thumb is only 2 bones. Okay. So okay. So we're nearly there. That's not too bad. I'm going to turn off X-ray. And we can see I could probably push these back a little bit on X. On X. Okay. So I have my bones in, so now I just need to go through the task of labeling them. So this is going to be TH1 dot, this is L, TH2 dot L, and we will label our counterparts over here. So TH1 dot L, oops, oh, dot OR, and TH2 dot OR. Now, I have my own way of doing this, so I call these so pinky1 dot L, and Control C, and this is pinky2 and pinky3, and I'll do the same over here. So this is 1 dot OR, and this is 2, and this is 3. Oops. Now, and what do I call these? So this is my index, so I'm going to call this index1.l, so Control C, and this will be 2, and this will be 3, and the same over here, but this will be with a dot OR, so Control C, and Control V, and Control V on this one as well. I'll make it number 3. I normally call this mid 1, so Control C, no, hang on, this is dot .or, so Control C, Control V, you can see why I said this was laborious, but, you know, we're flying through it. So Control V, this is dot L, Control C, Control V, lots of controlling C and controlling V. Now, last finger, and let's call this thing for finger, 1 dot L. So Control C, Control V, and Control V. Okay, so that's that hand done, and then it's just this guy here. So Control V, this is dot OR, so we'll copy that and then paste last bone. Okay, now I am definitely going to save that because I do not want to have to do that again. So File, Save. Okay, now, so, where are we? 25 minutes in. The next part of this is straightforward enough. We just want to join the mesh and the skeleton. But I'm just going to hide this first, and we're going to get this to work without put on some modifiers. So I'm going to take this here and go into pose mode. So we add in sort of the modifiers on the skeleton in pose mode, and I'm going to go to so these are constraints. Sorry, I'm saying modifiers, but I meant constraints. So this is going to be an inverse kinematic. Now, what's an inverse kinematic? It is, instead of forward kinematics, which is bone by bone animation, which is quite tedious and time consuming, but also very useful and used in places, we're going to have chains of bones. So we'll have, that said, I have a bone I haven't made. I'm going to make a wrist bone, but we'll get to that. So we're going to have chains of bones. So that's what inverse kinematics is, just animating using chains. So I've got my ranger rig, and what bone do I want? Well, this was going to be my IK bone, so it was foot IK, and this is on the left side. Okay. Now it's asked, so I can put in a chain length of 2. So I don't know if you can see that dotted line there. So this is going to the hip. If I, had put in a chain length of 3, it wouldn't work because there's no more bones. But I could have a very long chain. So say my arm, I'll stop it at the shoulder, but I could have it go all the way down to the base of the spine. So we get that set the length of the chain. Now, if I try and animate this now, it won't work, and that is because the bone, I've asked it to follow this bone. It's actually a child of this one. So it would give me a funny error. So I'm saying follow that bone, and this bone also has an instruction on it saying, well, follow this bone. So they're kind of following each other. So you get sort of an infinite loop. So you can see that this is being told to follow the shin. So we disconnect this. We disconnect the parenting of it, and we have to do the same on that side. And while I'm here in edit mode, I'm going to add a new bone in. So I'm just going to extrude this out here, and I'm going to call this hand ik.l. And I should have one over here, and it's going to be hand ik.or. And again, this bone should have no parent, and this bone should have no parent. Okay, so we'll go back into our pose mode, and now when I go G, I have this relationship here. So I can move my legs if I look from the side. So if I go G, G, what did I do there? I hit it, Alt H, there we go. So G, so you can see that my leg is coming up. Now it's sort of twisting the wrong way, so there is a way to fix that using a thing called pole targets. So we'll get that going in a minute. So I'm going to do the same with this one. I'm going to add a constraint, an inverse kinematic constraint, and it's I have to tell it what armature I want to use, and then what bone. So it's the foot IK, and in this instance it's .or. And then when I pick up this one, I should get the same effect. And I'm going to do the same with my forearm. So I'm going to say to my forearm, I want an inverse kinematic effect on ranger rig and hand ik.l. And this is what I meant about the chain length. So now this will move the whole rig, whereas if I set the chain length to just be to the shoulder, then that's what this will do. Okay, so let's do the same over here. So inverse kinematic and ranger rig hand ik.or, and set that to a chain length of 2, and there we go. Now, so that's a lot of what we wanted to have done. I have a little bit more parenting to do, so I'm going to just jump back into edit mode for a second and take this. And this has no parent, so this should be parented to the. Oh, hang on. Let's check this one first. This has no parent either. So this should be a child of the bend bone. Oh, hang on. I'm looking at the object and not the individual bone. My bad. So this here has no parent. So if I click this one, you can see that's its parent listed. This has no parent, and this has no parent. So I'm going to say, the spine should be the child of the bend bone. There's bend, and then the bend bone won't have any or parent except the master bone. So let's have a look at that in practice. So when I go G, I can move the upper part of the rig. That's not necessarily terribly useful. And this comes up and down here. So what's missing here is these bones here need to be the child of the bend bone as well. So bend. This one has to be a child of bend. Okay. Now we should get some interesting effects. So now I should be able to squat, basically. I should be able to. Oh no, I'm getting. So this, what we're seeing, interesting. So what we're seeing here is that's the sort of effect you get when you've got a loop in parenting. So something's in a chain that shouldn't be in the chain. So let's see what we've done incorrectly here. So let's go. So this is the this is the child of the bend bone. Let's just take that off there and go back into pose mode. See if that's where my problem resides. Okay. Okay, let's see if I've got bone roll in this guy. And I don't. Okay, so I'll fix that up. I'm not 100% sure actually right now where that error is coming from. But there's an error there, and we need to fix it. Like I said, it's a loop. So it's basically a bone that is the child of another bone that shouldn't be. But what the bend bone should do is it should allow me to squat. So when I move it down, the upper part of the rig will come down, and the bottom half of the rig will stay where it is. So if I make them, I'm just experimenting now. I think this will give me funny results. Let me go back into pose mode. Maybe I just need pole targets, and then this will work. So interesting. So yeah. So what we're trying to do here is we're actually trying to get it so that the bend bone, when I push it down, will make the character squat, and that allows me to do sort of interesting animations like jumping. And then what we also be able to do is to walk. So yeah, so the legs are moving a bit strangely. Maybe it's because just how they're positioned to the bones. So I might add some pole targets in at the start of the next video. So this video is basically about, we've one more tiny thing to do, which is to set this up. So this is just a track 2, and again we have to tell it the rig and then look. So this is going to follow this one, and we repeat it with this. So it's a track 2, the rig, and then the look bone. And no, we're just fortunate that everything's pointed in the right direction, so we're positive on Y. If this bone was behind us, we would look negatively on Y, so you can see it's flipped there. And yeah, you have different axes that you can work on. Basically, when I go G, when I move this up and down, the bones will, and the eyes will move up and down with it. So that will enable us to be able to animate the character looking. Okay, so let's go to object mode, unhide the rig, and this, that's our character there. We'll add back in our subdivision surface modifier, so we look a bit pretty before we finish. And there's the character, and the skeleton is made. I'm just going to save this. And in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to join them together, fix that little problem with the bend bone, join them together, and then start animating and getting this character to walk, which is the objective of this series of tutorials. Thank you.